All right, buckle up. We've got a lot to cover. We're going to cover two angles on this question of guidance, the voluntary and the involuntary. We're going to start with the simpler one first. For better or worse, at some point in your development, someone's going to approach you and ask you to teach them what you've learned. This might be a single lesson or access to an area of your expertise, or someone might really just be asking you to usher them through the path unto knighthood, acting as their guide, their mentor, their master. And that should leave you with a great deal to consider. Regarding a prospective student, let's investigate the various temptations and concerns. If this is the first time you're talking to this person, the only answers you need to give them are either no, or let's get to know each other and see if this is what really needs to be done. If they can't accept that second answer, they're going to have to go with the first one. If they just move on to the next night and ask again, that's unfortunate, but it's not really any of your business. Certain kinds of students get noticed before others. It happens. Smart is great. Passion has its place. A brave person is easy to admire, but these are not the only building blocks that make a good apprentice, and they're certainly not the sole province of the Jedi. Make an effort to see past these really dramatic attributes to what is more substantial about the student as a person. We're told that a Jedi craves neither adventure nor excitement, and that goes for our students as well. Don't be seduced by this flashy presence. Look for something else. Does this person want to be a Jedi, or do they just want to be something other than they are? Being a Jedi is a very specific endeavor, and so a person who simply wants to feel better or do better might be better served in a less structured relationship with you, or maybe looking elsewhere. Your job is not to turn them into a Jedi. If they're looking to be made special or to be saved, that's not your job. Those sorts of attitudes are generally really deeply ingrained, and you may not be the one to disabuse them of them. So maybe it's better if you just act as their friend. You might be their spiritual friend, their companion, but you're not their buddy, you're not their lover, and you're not their parent. You may have to push them into dark corners of their own lives or hold them accountable in ways that are ultimately kind but probably kind of unpleasant in the moment. That's your role, and you both need to be very clear on that. Do you really know what this person needs? Can you see the holes in their practice? Are you aware of the things that they already know, or the things they think they already know? Are you willing to take the time to find out? Do they admire your practice? Do they seek to emulate it? Do they admire it too much? Do they regard you as an easy A? Do they think of their training as a formality? They've already got this wrapped up. There's a lot of reasons people seek each other out. And when you ask, pro tip, don't let this turn into a mutual admiration society. Find out why they want to talk to you. Do you like this person? Do you admire them? Are you looking to fix them? Consider how you regard this human being. You don't have to like them, though I can't imagine recommending otherwise, but you do have to essentially respect them. Have you observed in this individual a pattern of commitment and follow through, a good reputation? More to the point, have you asked your gut about it? Ask yourself, is this person up for it? If you feel queasy or you feel a twinge, then you don't think they're up for it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with telling someone today is not the day. A lesson in patience, if offered kindly, can be very powerful. You need to examine all of these angles and decide. You shouldn't necessarily expect, a bunch of easy answers with nice clean edges, but you should be mindful of any serious red flags. You're going to be flattered the first time someone approaches you looking to you for what the Jedi path can offer, and you'll need to have the discipline to look past that. Speaking of which, we need to talk about you. I'll direct your attention to Abu Sa'id Abdul Qayyar. He was a Persian Sufi mystic and poet born in the 10th century. Among other things, he describes 10 characteristics of a spiritual teacher, and I suggest you confront yourself with these statements before undertaking an apprentice-master relationship with anybody. Here we go. Are you living it? You need to show more than you tell. Be an example. If you already demonstrate what you do, you can limit your teaching not to what to do, but how. You can't share what you don't have, or teach what you don't know. It's either in your bones or it isn't. Are you a skilled and organized teacher and communicator? Teaching is a skill. You've met ineffective teachers. Don't be one. Your student will require resources, time, attention, your emotional reserves, and you must be willing to make certain sacrifices on behalf of this effort. If you're too big a deal or simply already overcommitted, your prospective student deserves to know that up front. This is basic boundary stuff. You should never, ever put yourself in a position to take something away from your student. If you can direct them to what they need to understand rather than simply explaining it, do so. Don't do their work for them. Sometimes you'll have to be firm, but remember, you are your apprentice's ally. Consider that how you teach is part of what you teach, and it's going to be potentially part of how they teach. Don't send anyone someplace you haven't been. As a practical concern, this may mean testing your lessons on yourself before you try new things. This one doesn't require too much elaboration, but if you want your apprentice to make a sacrifice for the purposes of training, make sure that you have, or better yet, that you are doing it yourself. These relationships are and must be consensual, but that doesn't mean they should end casually. Sometimes you need to let someone go, but you do not simply abandon them. And even if they do leave, if you can, while respecting their boundaries, check in on them. Spend some time with these questions and ask yourself, am I up for this? Do I have what this student needs? Am I just doing this to be a master? This is Jedi method basics here. If you don't feel that you can do the job, respect the prospective student and yourself enough to send them in a better direction. You do have a duty to guide those who are newer to the path, but there's a lot of ways to do that. And maybe taking on an apprentice might not be the one for you, at least not now. You should expect to learn as much from the process of guiding an apprentice as they do. About the path, about the Force, about yourself. And if you aren't, you need to re-examine yourself and your process. My own master told me you need to love your student and love what you intend to teach them in order to succeed. It's not everything you need, but it is indispensable. It's a lot to consider, I know, but the responsibility of taking on a student is tremendous. You will always teach them something. And whether or not that is a lesson or a caution is up to you. And if you poison them with your hang-ups and your fears, you harm them and potentially the community at large. Of course, there will be mistakes, and every teacher has their limits, but do your best in a conscious and intentional way. Again, Thomas Merton. Okay, now the rough stuff. You might want to stretch first. Let me tell you a thing. You are a role model, a teacher, a guide, whether you like it or not. My Sifu told me this years ago, and I did not initially want to accept it, and my unwillingness to accept it changed nothing. With every action, utterance, post that we undertake in public, we are teaching and reinforcing always and everywhere what we regard as acceptable and expected. No matter how bad an example we set, there is someone out there who is going to see this and think that this is how it's done. This is more consequential with those who have less time on the path than you, or those individuals who are drawn to your personality, or as is too often the case, your antics. So go back, review everything I said about a prospective master, but let's explore another wrinkle in this. Jedi are only human beings, and our attention is always drawn to conflict. Therefore, our behavior in the context of conflict is extremely important. So how do we answer the inevitable digs, the pokes in the chest? Do we let our grievances go, or do we pursue ridiculous vendettas? When we fight, how do we fight? The truth is that the best of us don't always have a thirst for the big show, while the loudest and most strident voices rarely belong to our best and brightest. So let's talk about it. It's one single idea, but we're going to explore it a couple different ways. The first thing to keep in mind is that you cannot defend the principles of the Jedi path by violating. You may think you're acting in the interests of the community and the path, but you only degrade our work if you think you can draw a distinction between the means and the ends. The method is inseparable from the message. If someone else isn't living up to what you think a Jedi should be, you do not solve the problem by behaving worse than them. It isn't enough to work the path when things are going well, but to regard the Jedi path as suddenly impractical when things go sideways. Sure, we've heard the joke, Jedi in the streets, Sith in the sheets, and it's funny, but it's not a way to live. Get your heart, your reason, your will headed in the same direction. Being splintered is bad for you, and it sets a bad example. This is true of the path and of life in general. Do not regard yourself as an exception to Jedi morality or to data. You will make mistakes, and you're going to act out. It happens. And when it does, you admit to the error and you make right where you can. You should not try to justify your behavior. You must not relabel your vices as virtues. Whatever short-term reprieve you gain in protecting your ego will not be worth the harm you may do to the community. You may chase good people away from the community, or you may teach people that this is how a Jedi behaves, and quite frankly, I would rather you chase good people away. It all comes back to being the Jedi you want to see. If you don't make that sincere effort, other people will think it's okay not to try either. We all forget, and we all get overwhelmed. We all have gaps in our practices and areas of weakness. Everyone can understand and forgive errors of skill or knowledge. Nobody's perfect. No one is on their game every day. But we're talking about errors of virtue. Yeah, it's intense, but why do you think the Jedi of lore were always so focused, so reserved? I'll tell you why. Because it matters. Because you're already someone's teacher, someone's guide, whether you like it or not. So before you seek to guide someone formally, and since you're already doing it informally, whether you're happy about that fact or not, you need to work on yourself. You take out the trash in your head, you take out the trash in your heart. The world is hard enough to live in already. We need the best Jedi we can get, and we need to show each other how to do it. And I believe that we can. Stick to the path. Be the guide you need for yourself and for those who will come after. Please repeat the message. The Force is with us.